Look up the word crazy in the dictionary and you might just find an asterisk beside the definition that says, listen to the Subiquitous podcast featuring Sue Duffield and you'll find out what crazy means. Sue's travelogue journey of unfiltered stories, impossible miracles, and faith-filled fun will be revisited right here. So buckle up and let's get going with this humorous travelogue of an unfiltered saint, Subiquitous.
Again, I know I say this every time when we start the Subiquitous podcast, that when we have a guest, they're divinely invited. And I really believe that Toni Campbell's story is going to change your life in ways that you might not even be prepared for. So I welcome my friend Toni. I'm trying to figure out, though, sitting here waiting for you to get here. By the way, we're live on location at America's Keswick, which is pretty cool. And I thought about this. I'm trying to think the very first time that you and I came in contact together. Maybe you know better than I do. I don't even remember the first time that we met.
Well, I believe we met through our mutual friend, Terry Van, and I'm pretty sure it was at Central Baptist Church, which is now called Central Christ Center Church in Ewing, New Jersey. You were coming in and you were going to do something with the ladies, and I think that was it.
See, your memory is wonderful. Well, I am just honored, and I knew that we had met. And then we, of course, have kept in contact through Facebook and things like that, too. But tell me a little bit about Toni and your walk of faith, maybe going back when you first met Jesus. And I'm thinking there might even be a really neat story that you can kind of bring us into, because you're not only a wonderful person, but you're also a speaker for women. And I love that, too. So let's go with that.
Sure. I came to Christ when I was about 14 years old. My parents were going through a rough patch and I was really struggling. And one day I kind of just sat and had it out with God, didn't understand why that was happening. And my mother had started listening to a radio program actually called Let's Talk About Jesus. And I was just so impressed with the gentleman behind the mic who could open up his Bible and know exactly where to go, regardless of what the question being posed was, because it was a call-in show. And I thought, man, I wish I knew my Bible like that, because I had been raised in the church. I had my little certificate. I knew the 23rd Psalm and the Apostles' Creed and the Pledge of Allegiance to the Christian flag, but I didn't really have a personal walk with Jesus. And so listening to that program really brought me to a point where I committed my life at that young age.
So how old were you then?
14.
So you were just a teenager, and then God placed that in your heart just by listening to him, no doubt.
Absolutely. Now, I wish I could say it was a straight walk from there. Did a little backsliding around 18. I did. I dropped out of college and I got married. And I honestly do believe that it wasn't the man that God had for me. I was making some poor decisions, but I have two beautiful children from that union. And my daughter has a little 8-year-old granddaughter. And Emma, she is the sweetheart. So there were blessings that came from that.
My guess is, too, you've learned, too, like I have over the years, that God can take something that maybe didn't work out in the beginning in its inception like we thought, but that something good comes out of that.
Absolutely. After I did get divorced, I really grieved all the years and what potentially could have been lost. And God gave me Joel 2:25. I will restore to you the years that the locusts have eaten. And I believe that restoration has come through my mentoring of young women and speaking to women about the things that God has brought me through. And so he's used that, because we know there's nothing wasted in God's economy. And so he's used those experiences to encourage others. And it's just part of my testimony.
So when were you first asked, Toni, to give your testimony, let's say, in a public arena? I'm sure, because of your personality, someone said, okay, Toni, your turn. We want to hear your story. When did that happen for you?
I'm going to guess probably my mid-20s, because I did fall away from the church for a while. And then when I had my daughter, I knew there was something missing. I knew that I had to have that foundation for her. And so I went back to church and I began to get involved in the choir and women's ministry things. And so I'm going to guess it was mid-20s before I did that.
Wow. So then when I see you each time here at America's Keswick, which by the way is in Whiting, New Jersey, it's a wonderful conference center, and you don't live too far from here, correct?
Nope, just a mile from here.
And you're not old. You're not old enough to live here yet.
Unfortunately, I am. I do live in an over 55 community, so.
I know. I just don't picture Toni Campbell as being over 55. I'm sorry. And, I look in the mirror and I go, oh, Jesus, help her. But I know in the mind, I just don't think that I'm older than 30.
Right.
But I look in the mirror and I go, oh, no, that's wrong.
That's very true. I look at my daughter who was talking about her 20-year high school reunion. I'm like, that's impossible. That would make you, oh my word, you are 38 years old. How is that possible when mom is still 40? That's not possible.
It's not. So you've raised your kids pretty much and they're doing their own thing, but yet now you're in a new transitional time. And so tell us a little bit about what God is doing right now in your life.
Well, I've had an interesting walk. If I could back it up just a little bit, I actually went to college. I was a voice major with a piano minor, and that did not really take root, but I fell into a job doing benefits. So I worked in human resources for 20 years. And in my 40s, I went back to school. I was going to get a communications degree and I fell in love with radio. And so I took a class and one of my professors said, you have a real flair for writing. Have you thought about that end of things? During a tour of a local radio station, I saw the on-air personality. We were there for half an hour and he went on air like twice, once for like 8 seconds, once for 15 seconds. And I thought, I will be bored out of my mind. Let me seriously consider, the writing thing. And so when I interned at the radio station, one of the writers quit and they offered me a job. And within about a year and a half, I became the creative services director and I worked in radio, then writing and voicing commercials for 12 years. During that time, I started going to Central and I was separated and I was kind of pouring myself into things at the church. And so I was invited to a leadership seminar where I read a book called The Externally Focused Church. And there was a quote in that book. And it said, if your church closed its doors tomorrow, would your city notice? Would it weep?
Oh, what a great question that is.
It's an amazing question. And I had to go to the pastor and say, this is a loving, giving place, but you have to come inside the doors to figure that out. And I said, I really don't think we have a presence out in the community. And thankfully, he didn't kick me to the curb. He agreed with me and put me in touch with some like-minded people. And so the ministry called Community Connections was born. And I did that as a volunteer leader for 4 years. While I was working at the radio station, I was also teaching at the local college, some radio classes. And so I was doing a lot of things. But the radio station switched hands and their focus changed and it became a lot less family friendly. And I really felt God was saying, you need to, use your talents elsewhere. And so the job that I'm currently doing opened up at that time. I am the benevolence director at Princeton Alliance Church in Plainsboro, New Jersey. And so I interviewed for that and got that job. So I say I'm like Madonna. I keep, reinventing myself because, that's not a normal career path, human resources to radio to church, but it's where God has me. And so now that I am doing that, I also started writing and I was looking for a book that would give me information on how to do outreach. And there were a couple of books that gave ideas, but I'm like, okay, great idea. How do I do that? Somebody walk me through this process. It didn't exist. And so after 4 years of doing that, I felt like God said, you need to write the book. And so I wrote, Jesus Has Left the Building, the Nitty-Gritty of Creative Church Outreach. And that book has 12 different outreaches that anybody can do. You can scale them back or bump them up, but it's very, very practical because at the end of every chapter, I give you timelines, number of volunteers you'll need, approximate costs. Here's some resources to use in case you don't have funding. I was blessed to have it receive 2 different awards, and I think it was because of that practicality factor. And so I have that book, and now I am going out and speaking, but not just about outreach, but really how surrendering your life to God allows him to use you and the gifts that he's given you. And so it's really about trust. It's about trust and submission.
Do you feel like I do, Toni, that everything you've ever done in your life, put it all in one great big bowl, I guess, and all of those things now you are able to use in what you're doing now? How can you tell the listener right now who said, I was this one time and I did that, but I don't know how that fits into what I'm doing ministry-wise now, but I'm going to tell you the truth. All of those things make Toni Campbell. Every single one of the things that you talked about. And now it's benefiting you even more so now in your young 50s.
Well, God bless you, but I'm over the 6-0 mark.
Oh, I would never believe that.
Oh, well, you and my hairdresser now know the truth, and all the listeners. But the truth is, you're absolutely correct, because when I was in human resources, my specialty was benefits, and I was helping people with death benefits and long-term disability. And so I was walking people, holding their hand, walking them through very difficult times in their life. And as an outreach person, I have people calling every day who are being evicted from their home or who need to put food on the table. And so that ability to listen and to give empathy and compassion and walk people through a difficult time in their life is definitely something that I still use.
Right. And so then you have this whole expertise behind you. But you and I both know we can go to any college in the country and get a degree or get expert knowledge. But what I hear more than anything is your heart also with that. How important does your emotion, your heart, and your calling coincide with what you're good at?
I think that people can sniff out a fake, right?
That's right.
So when you've walked that walk and you can pull from your experience and say, hey, what I went through may not be the same thing as what you're going through, but I have a glimpse into how you're feeling. It really kind of creates that bond in the beginning of that relationship and trust, because people hear what you're saying, but they want to see what you're doing and they want to know that it's for real.
Boy, if I could write a book, that would be the title also. Nobody cares what I know, but they want to know if I care. Correct?
Yes, that's a great title.
No, I know. I just made it up.
I'll ghostwrite it for you. Here we go. A book is born.
But what I love most about Toni is the fact that you are so approachable. And let's just face it, in the world and the culture that we live in, we emulate all of these, quote, celebrity type speakers that are out there. And you and I are from Jersey. I'm assuming you grew up kind of.
Yes, I did. Born and raised.
So the Jersey girls are going to talk here just for a second. We are, quote, told in the mainstream media that if you don't have a number one book, or if you don't have at least 5,000 following you on Facebook, and you don't have all of these things, that most major publishers won't even look at you, let alone give you an opportunity. But you and I both know the secret. It's the secret of loving your community and loving the people that follow you on Facebook or Instagram or wherever, but also in your live speaking events. My guess is, without knowing, that you're the first person to get there. You're probably the first person to share your heart with people that come up to you, and then you're the last person to leave. I wish that I could even teach a course for women who want to become speakers and want to become authors, to have what you have, that you have learned from a series of sometimes unfortunate events, correct?
Yeah, Absolutely. And prayer. Don't forget getting there early to pray over the situation, pray over the rooms, pray over the chairs. Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. And this is the cool thing is that I know personally what's going to happen. I hope that we can see as we look back, maybe even on this episode in the next year or so. God's going to use you, Toni. If he hasn't already, he's using you in a whole different dimension. What are some goals that you have and maybe some visionary thought process that you have that you would like to accomplish in the calling that God has on your life? Is there something that's kind of been hanging out there that you've said, one day I will hope to do, and maybe finish that question?
Ooh.
I know. I know. I didn't give her much chance to think about that. But is there something on your heart that you would like to do that you haven't done yet?
Yes. There is another book in there about trust. And I think in especially the world as it is today, there is a need for hope and something real to trust in, because everything's a scam. Everything's a fake.
Sure is, yeah.
But Jesus is the real deal. He will never leave you. He will never forsake you. He is faithful. I just love the song that talks about, I've seen him move the mountains and I know he'll do it again. I've been through some really difficult things in my life, but through it all,
Right.
I've trusted him. Yes. Don't you love that song?
Andre Crouch couldn't have written a better song for you and I. I've learned to trust in Jesus. I've learned to trust in God. And for sure, that's a living, breathing testimony of that for sure. So do we dare bring up a mutual friend? Should we dare talk about Terry Van?
I think we should. I definitely will make her tune in.
Terry is probably another person. She's like one of those real people with skin that you never have to question what she's thinking about, correct?
Correct. Absolutely. She's got a story for everything. She's an amazing Bible teacher. Yes, absolutely. But she's a hoot and a holler for sure. For sure.
And we all need those hoot and holler friends, right? More than ever in the community, especially of Christian women's ministry, we have found over the years that when you have someone that you either look up to, or maybe they're on the same level you are as far as our theological, growth. But my mom used to always say to me, Sue, always be friends with someone who could at least lead you in a direction that maybe you haven't gone yet. Mm-hmm. And I watch Terry sometimes and I see how God has used her in her ministry and reaching out. And it's not a surprise to me that you and I have that mutual friend.
Well, I don't know if you know this. I'm going to tell the story. She knows what I'm going to say. Years ago, I was on the women's ministry team that Terry was leading. And this was about the time that stuff started to percolate with the outreach. And I loved women's ministry, but she kicked me off the team because in her wisdom, she said, there are a number of women who can join this team and do a great job. But right now, only you can do what you are doing in the other arena. And you need to go do that and do that well. And so she really does have a lot of discernment. So I always talk about, when she fired me.
And for the listener out there, Terry Van is a mutual friend of ours. I've known Terry probably since, the 80s or even beyond. And so we go back quite a long time with that. But there's another name, too, that we have a mutual interest in, and her name is Robin Dykstra.
Yes.
And so something very exciting is coming up on her behalf with you. So tell us a little bit about that.
Robin has something called boot camp for speakers, and it's a 10-week course, an 8-week course. And she really helps you develop your speaking skills, your presentation skills, creates speeches that really point people to the Lord while using your experience. And I'm just so excited to up my game and really improve how I can present this story that God has given me. Because when I talked about the book on trust, it's because I want to show people what God has done in my life and through my life. And that is what he put me here for. And that's what I have to do.
Right. And so you literally in a year, when does boot camp start?
September 10th.
Okay. So in maybe a year from now, we're going to have you back after boot camp.
Sounds good.
And I'm going to send it to Robin and I'm going to say, listen to what you did. But you're absolutely right. And there's something about mentorship and taking the hand of someone that you know is gifted and has a calling on their life. But yet there are some things that Robin does offer that I will say there aren't a lot of people that offer what she does.
That's true.
This is going to be a great way to what I would call hone your craft even more.
Absolutely. We're always learning, right?
Even me, who's older than you. Old dogs can be taught new tricks too.
Yes,
but the good thing is this is with podcasting. This was a whole new thing for me, Toni, 4 years ago. I had no idea. But like you, with a past of radio and past of public speaking, it was almost like a no duh. All I have to do is literally just have a microphone in front of my hand and I'll be okay. But I still had to learn a lot of things. So what is Toni learning today? What did God, when you got up this morning and you thought about what we were going to do today, did you have any thoughts about what you'd like to say on this episode with me?
Honestly, I just prayed that I would sound coherent and that, he would give me the words that he wanted me to share, because it's easy to get all caught up in your head and, I don't know what to do, and to start to self-doubt and to have that imposter syndrome and think, nobody cares about what I say. Nobody cares about what I'm doing. And the truth is, we're important to God. And so therefore we matter.
That's right. The audience that I love so much that listens to me every week, I know they're going to love you because you're exactly where they are. They're in a position sometimes of feeling like I'm invisible sometimes to my own community. I have the goods, but yet I don't know what to do with them. But at the same time, we always walk in that step of faith saying, Lord, what do you have for me today? And even though I'm not an internationally known speaker. I told somebody that I'm the most famous, unfamous person there is. But yet there are people that we know that God can use for their listening ear to hear what I have to say. So I always have to say, Lord, is it really from you, or is it just something that I just kind of conjure up myself? So God, give me a word that would be a blessing to someone. So let's talk a little bit about some of your favorite scripture verses and why they're important to you, and what is the one that maybe got you through some of the tough times.
Exodus 14:14. The Lord himself will fight for you. Just remain calm. And that kind of got me through that tough time with separation and divorce because, I didn't want it to be bitter and I didn't want it to be contentious. And it was like, Lord, I give it to you. You've got the battle. You know what's going on. I already shared Joel 2:25 that he would restore the years that the locusts have eaten, and Ephesians 3:20. He is able to do exceedingly abundantly more than you can ask or imagine. And I can imagine quite a bit. So
imagination is not a problem.
No, it is not a problem. And actually, one more was coming to mind when you were just talking, and that was Joshua 1:9, to be strong and courageous. As he gives us these different things that he wants us to accomplish, we have to know that he goes before us.
Right. So you're going to go through boot camp with Robin Dykstra, but my guess is there's going to be some parts in her program that you're not going to need. But if anything, what it's going to do is it's just going to confirm, affirm, and enhance what God has already called you to do. So when you go through that boot camp, remember, you're not going in blindly. You are already gifted going into this program. And the good thing is that God's going to expand it even more so. Give us an address or an email or somehow, some way that those that are listening that may want to contact you for maybe one of their events.
Sure. I am on Facebook as Toni Campbell Author, but I also have a website, tonicampbell.org. And if you want an email address, it's christianwomensspeaker@gmail.com.
tonicampbell.org.
and Christian Women's Speaker at gmail.com.
Christian Women's Speaker at gmail.com. And you go anywhere somebody will call. Like, what if somebody calls you from New York? You're gone?
I'm going. Yeah.
So it doesn't matter. I love what God's going to do through you. He already has. And I'm just praying that God will continue to bless you in your ministry. And is there anything else that we haven't talked about that you wanted to say? You know, I know you came in here today like saying, oh, yeah, this is a day that the Lord hath made, but sometimes it doesn't always go according to the schedule, correct?
That is very true. It's very true. And I'm dealing with things in my family that I think a lot of people are dealing with right now. I shared a little bit with you about mental health issues. And, we just need to be in prayer for especially our teenagers, because the devil really seems to be attacking that age group, our young adults in particular, through mental health issues. And I think maybe some of that is because we also have to get back to the basics and being able to not defend, but explain our faith, know why we believe what we believe so that the world can't buffet us, so that when we're hit with things that create questions or doubts, that we know those scriptures and that we can affirm those promises of God and just know Him personally. So, yeah.
Toni, you're a gem. You're a good friend. And I so appreciate you more than you probably even know. And I will lift you up. And I know that there are many that listen that are going to put you on their prayer list because they take it personal. They figure, well, if it's Sue's friend, then I'm just going to take her on too.
All right. That sounds good to me. I need all the prayer I can get.
One more thing, Toni, before we close, let's talk a little bit about your books that are there now, the book that you have, and then one that's coming out.
Right. As I said, Jesus has left the building. The Nitty-Gritty of Creative Church Outreach is all about community outreach, but I am doing a collaborative work with some ladies that I met through the She Speaks conference. And that one is called Faithful in Every Season. There's 11 women and they're going to share their heart through poetry, testimonials, devotionals. And there are some wonderful, wonderful stories. I'm on the editing team for the book and I'm just really being blessed as we go through that. So I think that you should keep an eye out for that one. Don't have a release date yet. It will be definitely next year. But Faithful in Every Season.
I love the title. So ToniCampbell.org, be sure to check that out. And thank you again, Toni. We'll have you back probably, let me think. What did I say? Oh, yes, after boot camp with Robin Dykstra. Yes, indeed. We'll have you back and we'll find out how God is using you more than ever. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it, Sue.